All right, welcome back to the Courtroom Chronicles podcast. And today we have our Vehicular Crimes Bureau Chief, Lonnie Pennell, joining us. Lonnie, I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, I don't want to give away exactly the case we're going to talk about yet, but just for both of you, the reason we're talking about this case is because, well, let me ask you this. For each of you, how often do you hear, oh, you guys are going too hard on this person, or you're not, going nearly hard enough?
So, in the types of cases I deal with, whenever somebody's hit or killed by another driver, it's every case. Sometimes it's victims' families. They want the maximum penalty. Sometimes it's defendants' family members who think it was just an accident and drugs or alcohol didn't have anything to do with it. And when you look at members of the public, we get a pretty mixed bag when I talk about the types of cases that I deal with.
Yeah, and Ken, I'm guessing it's rare that you get people that are saying, oh, you're approaching this case exactly perfectly.
Yes, I think I can count on exactly 0 fingers the number of times that I've had somebody reach out and say, you guys are spot on. It's generally, you only hear negative feedback. You only hear because you're too soft, because you're too hard. When you hit that Goldilocks zone, everybody just kind of stays quiet. So this is a constant criticism that we're always looking and trying to reevaluate.
In the case we're going to talk about today, Lonnie, you prosecuted it. It is a very tragic case, but I think one that really encapsulates the very difficult job that you all have to do when trying to decide, hey, what do you do with this person? What do you do with this case? Case in point, we use this at our Citizens Academy, and it's literally, we ask before they know what happened with it, hey, what would you do with this? You ask 10 different people, you get 10 completely different answers on opposite sides of the spectrum. So Lonnie, I guess I'll kind of let you set it up. This involves, we're not going to use her name, a 15-year-old girl at the time. This was in May of 2019, and just kind of take us through who was in the vehicle, or just kind of set this up for us.
Yeah, so basically it was 4 teenage girls who were classmates in high school, decided to play ditch school that day. And there was one person who...
And it was May, so I'm guessing it's end of the year. They're probably in good moods. Hey, school's almost out for the summer.
I think it was actually even like senior skip day, like one of those where it was just not an unusual circumstance, let's put it that way.
Yeah, it wasn't shocking. They all decided to, take off, didn't really know where to go or what to do, so they were just driving around. One of the teenagers in the car had a driver's license, had her mom's truck. They were just kind of driving around, trying to figure out where to go, what to do. Do they go up to the valley, go hang out at somebody's house? They're just kind of driving around. As they're driving around, the defendant, who was not a licensed driver yet because she wasn't 16, she says, I want to drive. And eventually they let her drive. And so they're driving on Casa Grande Maricopa Highway on the Auction Reservation. Eventually she's driving and she starts speeding up. She gets up to roughly 80 miles per hour. Truck starts shaking. She starts panicking. She goes off right, ends up overcorrecting, rolling the truck, and 2 of the teenage girls get ejected from the vehicle and ultimately die on scene.
And she was, even before she takes the wheel, she was like literally posting to social media. They were vaping or something like that. I mean, just kind of goofing around.
Yeah, so they were goofing around. She was sitting in the truck taking selfies, smoking a vape of some sort. It was never recovered, so we don't know what was in the vape, but she's kind of showing herself just vaping, kind of dancing along to music. They're all just kind of being goofy and silly just prior to that.
So it was the 2 girls in the back of the truck that got ejected and passed away. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
The third was seriously injured?
She had some broken bones. I believe it was a broken ankle. She generally recovered from that, didn't have any long-lasting injuries.
And then the driver, she obviously survived.
She survived, yes. So she got out of the truck. Truck caught on fire. She ended up pulling the surviving person out of the vehicle.
And she was 15, so she wasn't a licensed driver. But my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was not only was she under 16, but she really had not practiced driving at all. So it wasn't like she had a permit or anything like that. She really was a novice driver.
Correct. To the best of our knowledge, she didn't have any experience driving. This was her probably first go round at driving.
So Kent, when do you become made aware of this, and how do you kind of process the details when you hear, hey, 15-year-old driver with her friends kills two of her good friends?
So generally speaking, my office notifies me of all potentially criminal vehicle deaths, any homicides. So I learn of it that same day, few hours after the incident occurs. I'm given the rough circumstances of what happened. Obviously, first thing is, how are the survivors, how everyone's doing. The two young ladies were deceased. We were worried about the third. And at that point, we're just saying, okay, then we need to staff this case. I mean, because, what we're hearing is it's 4 kids that are doing dumb kid stuff. But that dumb decision resulted in the loss of life. So it's a case that immediately gets elevated where all of my bureau chiefs, Lonnie, our team sits together and we really kind of dig into the case to try and make sure we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, and Lonnie, you are the one that prosecuted this case. What were you what was kind of going through your mind when, and I know it's kind of a team decision, Kent decision as well, but what's kind of going through your mind when you're evaluating the circumstances of this case?
So I actually started here in February of 2020, and so this was a case that was sitting on my desk waiting for me. I talked to the attorney who handled it beforehand, and he kind of gave me a little bit of some info. He was a little bit mistaken on some of the facts. One of the issues that popped up was some of the videos of her vaping. On first blush, it looked like she was driving and vaping at the same time. However, once we kind of dug into it a little bit, we realized those images were mirrored. And so she was actually in the passenger seat, not in the driver's seat. So it was kind of a constant analysis. We went out and looked at the vehicle, dug into the case a little bit, and just kind of tried to figure out what do we have and how does it look to a jury.
And then how do you assess the fact that it's, wasn't intentional? As a 15-year-old, how does that kind of come into play when you're assessing how to charge the case?
So most of the cases I deal with are not intentional. It is people who make mistakes. It is people who decide to either do drugs or alcohol prior to driving or to drive in extremely reckless manners at high speeds. So that's not anything that's particularly new to me in dealing with reckless homicides. So I look at what is the underlying reckless behavior. In this case, we had speed. There was no blood draw done, so we have no idea, again, whether or not that was a marijuana vape, whether that was nicotine vape. And so, we have our thoughts on what it probably was, but we don't get to portray those to a jury. And so we don't really get to consider that a whole lot in our decision-making process. So we look at what was the underlying behavior here. The underlying behavior was she was unlicensed, driving well beyond the speed limit, and with multiple passengers who reportedly told her to slow down prior to the collision. That was kind of one of the big things that stuck out to my mind was you're being told slow down by people who know how to drive when you don't know how to drive and you don't listen.
I suppose there's an argument that they shouldn't have let her drive, but Kent, where do you kind of chime in here when you're staffing this case, and what are your thoughts on this?
So oftentimes what we're looking at are what are those aggravating factors that exist? What are the factors that we think makes this more than just a simple accident? Lonnie alluded to it when it first came in. Our belief was that she was driving with no hands on the wheel, actually doing a selfie, taking a hit off a vape at the same time. So obviously that's an incredibly aggravating factor in our minds. Originally, we believed that it was in fact marijuana that was in the vape cartridge. So we thought, okay, now you've got somebody who's never driven before, who's never been licensed, who is speeding, driving on a road they're not particularly familiar with, in a vehicle they're not familiar with no hands, recording a social media selfie and getting high at the same time. The first analysis was, holy moly, this checks every box. I mean, this is somebody that is an absolute and utter danger to our community. But as Lonnie said, as we continue to do the investigation, I mean, not everything is what it looks like at first glance. That's why we do follow up. That's why law enforcement does all of their follow-ups, and they cut supplemental reports, and we do all of the accident reconstruction. We do all of that stuff to continue to get information to make sure that we have the best information to go forward. So as we start peeling off what are some of the worst offenses, now we're starting to look at it saying, okay, what we have is we have a young girl who's never driven before. And I would encourage everyone to think about the very first time they kind of drove, if you ever panicked. I mean, sometimes instead of, hitting the decelerator when you start to lose control or you start to get a little bit loose, you kind of slam on whatever. And in this case, it probably makes sense that she slammed on the accelerator instead of the decelerator. So now you're looking at it saying, look, this was an inexperienced driver who, was really just involved with peer pressure. So now you're trying to balance like, okay, this is a kid who made a really dumb decision as a child, but this had adult consequences. And that's where we really start trying to weigh and balance what's justice in this case. What is the fair result in a case like this?
Because I'm sure, and I don't know literally how the victims' families felt in this case, but either they did or certainly could have thought, hey, I don't care that she's 15, throw the book at her, like, this is ridiculous, like, because you have people looking at that going, man, my loved one's gone. At the same time, I'm sure you have that argument of she's 15, so dumb decision when, we've all made dumb decisions. I'm not saying that they're apples to apples comparisons, but how do you kind of weigh, and how difficult of a decision was that when you look at what are clearly two distinct sides to how tough you need to be here?
So the family members of the deceased individual showed up at every court date. I had lengthy conversations with them every single step of the way. Both families were very adamant that this person killed their child at a very young age, and they, nothing was going to bring their child back, and they wanted there to be severe and substantial punishment.
So, Mike, you alluded to it earlier. We talk about this case at our Citizens Academy. At this point, we've had probably 250 people run through our Citizens Academy, and we just lay this sort of case out, and we just ask the general public with these facts, hey, and we talk about what the sentencing range is and what can happen, and we ask them, what should happen? And we've had everywhere from she should spend every waking moment of the rest of her life in prison to we shouldn't even charge her. This was a kid that made a dumb decision. It wasn't a criminal act. It was a dumb act. It was a decision, and everything in between. I can't even tell you there's a consensus, and you can see people are looking at the way that maybe something like this has personally impacted them, or the loss of a loved one, or you see some people thinking back and they almost look a little bit sheepish, and they're probably going back to when maybe they were 15 years old and maybe they drove a vehicle and they shouldn't have, and you have all of this sort of self-reflection. So, our job as ministers of justice, our job is not to get the greatest punishment ever. Our job also isn't just to let her go, but it's to try and find and do the right thing. That's what we're called upon. And that's why, how many times did we staff this case, Lonnie?
Lots.
Yes, probably 5, 6, 7 times anyways where we formally staffed it, and numerous times that we talked about it. Actually took us years to get the case resolved because it kept going back and forth and really trying to get this right. Lonnie said the family, they lost their children. Their daughters didn't get to walk down watch them graduate. They didn't get to walk down the aisle when they got married. They didn't, they were deprived of grandchildren. These lives were snuffed out because of this decision. On the other hand, it was a child who made a childish decision. And how do you weigh all of those?
Yeah. And how did you define the right thing to do in this case? How did the group come together, and what was ultimately decided on, and how to proceed?
I think the ultimate decision here was that it was a child who made a childlike decision, but that decision still needed accountability. So the case was originally charged as manslaughter, which is a class 3, 2 counts of that, and 1 count of aggravated assault, which is a class 3 felony.
So it would be 2 manslaughter for the 2 deceased, and then aggravated assault for the 3rd friend who was injured.
Correct, yes. What we ultimately ended up doing was dropping the homicide or the manslaughter down to negligent homicide. So dropping it down 1 level from recklessness to negligence, and then to a class 4 aggravated assault.
So in layman's terms, for people who don't understand so negligent homicide is how serious is that in layman's terms?
So you've got premeditated murder, you've got 2nd-degree murder, then you've got manslaughter, and then you've got negligent homicide. Negligent homicide is still you caused the death of somebody else.
Because you were negligent?
Correct. Mm-hmm. Your negligent behavior resulted in the death of another human being.
So you all settle on negligent homicide. And to be clear here, she was 15, so I think a lot of people watching this might go, oh, okay, so then she was, was she charged as a juvenile, as an adult? How does that work, and what did you decide?
So she was charged as an adult. Given the serious nature of the charges, obviously, when you kill somebody, Arizona law says in a lot of circumstances that we shall do it as an adult. Given her age, I think it was in our discretion to charge her as an adult, but she was very close to that line, 16 years old. Where we get to make that decision, but given the fact that there was 2 deaths and 1 person who had a broken bone, we decided to charge her as an adult.
And so if you were to go to trial facing negligent homicide charges, what is the potential severity that can occur if, what's the biggest penalty that I can have if I'm charged with negligent homicide?
So it's up to 6 years in the Department of Corrections, a minimum of 2 years. Presumptive term, or where the judge is supposed to start when they begin their sentencing, is 4 years.
And then, so if you had 2 deaths, I mean, you could be facing more than a decade in prison in theory if you were to go to trial.
Yes.
And remember, we charged it originally as homicide, and we charged it as a dangerous homicide. So that is a 7, 10.5 presumptive, 21 max. So if we were to go to trial on this and we were able to prove the homicide case and that she's a dangerous instrument, could be looking at 42 years just on the homicides alone, on the deaths themselves, and then an ag assault. So we could have gotten north of almost 50 years in prison as sort of the very top end of what she was facing.
So what was the ultimate resolution here? And she did not go to trial, correct?
That is correct. She ended up taking a plea that we ended up offering. So we dropped the manslaughter down to negligent homicide, 2 counts of that, and then 1 count of aggravated assault as a class 4 felony. And what we did was, it was no agreements, meaning that it was going to be left up to the judge to decide, to listen to both the families who were impacted as well as the injured teenager, to listen to them, to hear what they had to say, what they wanted, and then listen to the defendant and her family, and then ultimately make that decision of whether it was going to be probation, whether it was going to be Department of Corrections.
Because normally in a plea agreement, the 2 sides would stipulate to some sort of range of recommended outcome to the judge, and then the judge ultimately determines, right? So how rare is it that you have a plea agreement where there is no stipulated range of potential penalties?
So I'll jump in there, Mike. First, I would encourage everybody to go back to our second episode where we actually talked about plea agreements and how we get to that point. So good.
Episode 2, yes.
There we go. So what ends up happening, our office had a split. Most cases when we staff them, there's a general consensus. 6 out of 7, 7 out of 8 people believe that this is generally the right disposition or result. This is a case where there was a diverging opinion. There were those that thought she should have been treated harsher. There are those that thought she was being treated too harshly, even within our office. So oftentimes when we have those cases where there's a legitimate split of opinions, those are the ones where we kind of give that no agreements and say, look, Judge, we want to give both opportunities. We're going to give the family, and we'll argue on behalf of the family, and we'll put forward all the facts showing the aggravating factors, and the family has an opportunity to talk about the impact it had to them. But we also give the defendant the opportunity to present to the judge and to say, this is why I deserve a break. And ultimately, the judge gets to weigh all of that information to come up with the right decision. So as a percentage, it's tough. I mean, 98% of cases resolve via plea agreements. There's usually always some little wiggle room. But to have kind of this huge, wide-ranging thing, you're talking, maybe a percentage of cases or 2 at the very most.
How did that sentencing hearing go? And then ultimately, what did the judge decide?
So sentencing took a few hours, obviously.
And it does not always. It usually is. A lot of times it goes really quick.
Correct. But when you start dealing with homicide cases, you get family members who want to come and talk to the judge, and per the Arizona Constitution, they are more than welcome to, and they are allowed to, and by law are required to be allowed to. So you get family members who go and talk to the judge and talk about what this has done to them and what they want to see. And so one family was still very adamant they wanted the maximum punishment. Another family the process had kind of drug on for a while, and they had gotten to the point where they wanted forgiveness, and what they wanted the defendant to do from that point on was to live her life in a way that respects their daughter, that she continued to live on and do things that their daughter was never going to be able to do. and to, preach out to young people about the dangers of these types of decisions. And so then the defendant's family had an opportunity to speak. And what the judge ultimately ended up doing was 4 years of probation on all 3 counts. The 2 homicides were going to run one right after the other, and 120 days of jail.
So 3 months jail, 8 total years of probation.
Correct, yes.
And how were you guys satisfied with that?
I don't know if I would say I was satisfied with that. It's always tough to walk away from these sorts of cases. Nobody ever walks away happy when we're done with a homicide case. The criminal justice system can't bring people back. We can hold people accountable for their decisions. We can try and protect the public. And it's one of those things where you walk away and it's going to stay in your mind for a while. And you're going to look back and you're going to hope that the right decision was met. But unfortunately, we don't have the ability to look into the future and see what's going to happen.
Kent, you talk a lot about how difficult it is to define justice, and I think that this case really encapsulates that, because it's was. I don't know how you feel about the sentence, because it's like I don't know. I mean, it is what it is, and it's a very difficult case to get your mind around.
There's 4 families that have been forever more impacted. You've got 2 families that lost a loved one. They lost a sister, they lost a daughter, they lost a cousin, they lost an integral family member. You've got another girl that survived, but she still had broken bones. She lives with that trauma of being in an accident, a rollover accident that her best friends were killed in. And then you have the defendant, whose life is forever altered. She is now a convicted felon. She will have that, not only the guilt of killing her best friends, but also this criminal conviction that she carries with her for the rest of her life. I don't know, is 120 days adequate punishment? I don't know. Who are we to try and make that determination? I think what Lonnie said is what we hope is it gives the families a little bit of closure. It gives the defendant the ability to move on, and hopefully, she becomes a productive member of society and she gives back to our community. There's no satisfaction. There's no relief. There's no joy. I don't know that there's sadness. I don't know that there's anger or frustration. It is a very tragic case. It's a tragic point that we just move on from. That's what Lonnie said, and I think he's right.
And you brought it up, but I mean, she would be the defendant now. At the time of us filming this, would be about 2021. Still has decades of life to one, get to live, but then 2, have to live with what happened when she was 15.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another important fact that I'd bring up is the teenager who survived. It was her truck. She was the one who allowed the defendant to drive. So I think she also had a good amount of guilt going on with her, even though under the law, she's a victim of this case. But I think she had some guilt about what happened that day as well.
And I'm sure this sticks with both of you. And I just think it really shows how difficult, and we'll end this with where it started. I know you all and we all get, knocked all the time for being too harsh or not harsh enough. This case really just shows how difficult. I mean, how do you come up with a number? How do you come up with a specific charge? How do you come up with that perfect answer as to how I'm going to treat this person in the criminal justice system? This case, I just think, does such a good job, unfortunately, of showing how difficult your job is.
Unfortunately, we don't live in a black and white world. A lot of the cases we get, Lonnie said it earlier, it's people that didn't go out intending to kill people. People didn't go out with the intention to harm somebody, but they made a tragic decision that resulted in that. We live in a gray world, and what we really try to do is just do the best to make the right thing occur, to that we make sure that we bring the victims along, that we honor the victims and what they've sacrificed, but we also, we're not walking around just trying to put everybody in prison for the bad decisions that they made. Instead, we're always trying to strike that balance. And you're right. Lonnie said in these type of cases, there are no winners. Nobody ever walks out happy. But we put our head down every day and we do everything we can to keep you as a community safe and to make sure there is accountability, but that accountability is coupled with mercy.
And I hope this case and this discussion has really helped people better understand the difficult job everyone in this office has in trying to come up with how to approach a lot of different cases. And Lonnie, I appreciate your time and your insight. And for all of you who watched or listened, we'll see you next time on Courtroom Chronicles.